Hi, I'm Seamless, and today is Wednesday, still, and it is time for a new viewer track review video. Coming up first today, we have Our Day by RMC. Did actually name it properly, but sometimes Edison likes to show only the real title and not also the artist name. There really no logic on that, but it's there somewhere. But here comes this track, here and now.
Sunlight will shine for us, and when we will be strong and stand up again, with courage we'll rise up and pave the way to let the world know this is our day. To let the world know this is our day. Sunlight will shine for us, and when we will be strong and stand up again, with courage we'll rise up and pave the way to let the world know this is our day. To let the world know this is our day. It takes some time for us to build a power goal to be fulfilled. Determination from inside, and life will not pass us by. Sunlight will shine for us, and when we will be strong and stand up again, with courage we'll rise up and pave the way to let the world know this is our day. Sunlight will shine for us, and when we will be strong and stand up again, with courage we'll rise up and pave the way to let the world know this is our day. To let the world know this is our day. To let the world know this is our day.
And then I just stopped. Well, I appreciate a fish and outro sometimes. So, this track is very like dirty phonicsy aside of Pendulum. Dug it. I dig the vocals. Very triumphant. Very cool. It has a particular mixing issue, which is that this track clearly was balanced for this section and this stuff, because when this came in all by itself, was a little lackluster, mostly because this intro very nicely built up and had lots of, you can kind of see this mid-rangey presence due to the vocals and stuff, and then it just wasn't there anything to follow it up. Same deal. Like, I mean, that you can see kind of bird's eye, like this is the range the vocals exist in, and there's a big old hole in the mix for them to exist, which makes good sense for when they're here, right? And what's ironic about that, because you'd expect, how to put this, you would expect that, sure, by the time we got here and we're hearing this, that cool, that doesn't really matter that it didn't happen before, but because it happened before, and because we know what this sounds like without it, because we've heard it, this section, when we get to this part, it's super helpful because now the listener's trained to understand the full difference between that content and the new added stuff. So they can tell what all parts are new. And what that also means is that you still have the presence problems on the low end that you did earlier over here, because they're not mystified by this now. They would be if this was like this, like fully up here, but because there is some room made there, their presence here is like it's weird because they have the presence, but they're actually not helping the presence. So what do you do if you're gonna do something like this again? What I recommend is just, you can do these sections, but just have a different bass or a different mid element that is only for these moments when this stuff's not doing this, so that you don't really get a good look at what the stuff's like without it. Lots of pendulum tracks do that. Like, a lot of times they'll have their kind of main leady moments, and they'll have their basses in there. But then when they don't have any lead element at all, be it the vocals or an actual synth, and it's just the bass, that's when the bass is its whole opened self. But if you listen to the bass during the moments with the other stuff, sometimes you get some moments where they are open, but most of the time they kind of like are filtered down to make the space. So it's like they would be in this position for when this stuff happens and such. But then during the rest of the moment, they would keep going up and be open. Indeed. So overall, though, it was pretty cool. I was going to say something about how the focus on the low end kind of suffered, made the track suffer a bit on having presence on any other range. But I thought about it after hearing it again a few times, after talking about it. And now I'm on board. I'm on board with how loud and forceful the low end is relative to everything else. I say relative to everything else because usually you can get something to be like this. Like, note the coloration of the brightness of the visual here, right? Sometimes when we look at those tracks that are like really, really, really loud, we see this color like on the whole thing. But this is actually a kind of a reasonable look. So what this looks like, this would feel really, really intense, like in a car or like with a sub-E system, because it's actually really high. This is extremely loud amount of bass. And you've heard me before talk about like too much bass this, too much bass that, but that was mainly as like a limitation on what it means for your master. Which is to say that if you can accomplish the master with while doing this, like, you can do it. It's hard, it's annoying, but you can. And if you can, then by all means, because that's the future. Doing harder, cooler, more impossible things more often, right? So that works out. It's gone on my voice right now. Moving on, we have Professor Enigma, Propagation. See, well, I guess it has underscores. That's probably why, right? The ones that have underscores and the one don't. The one don't, yes. Okay. Here comes this guy. Okay, that was short. It was a bunch of neat ideas, I guess. This really feels like a vignette of a thing, right? Like a medley of a larger deal. I speak a lot about how sometimes not all content can survive the big epic whole arrangement thing, right? But like, this is something that doesn't seem like that. This doesn't seem like something that it's sort of the opposite. Maybe should be longer than that or not. Or I mean, whatever this might be used for something, like, because it seems deliberate. Like this sort of that got interesting. So let's talk about this section though, because I imagine your intention was not to collapse to mono like this in this area. I don't know what or how you're doing the guitar there, but let's talk about how guitar sounds like guitars. So, you just picture your typical rock band, right? The most bland, the guitar, bam, power chord sound, right? The way that sound is accomplished is you do the distortion stuff, and then you record it twice, and you pan it left and right. That is it. And if you're doing the digital simulation, you get the benefit of being able to record the dry signaling, and you get to do it that way. And that means you can change your tone and stuff later, and you can also edit it better. I brought this up because that's clearly not happening in this section, and I am bringing it up and giving that to you because this might have been intentional. This might have been some weird technical failure creating a mono issue, or you just might not have known that, because I definitely didn't know that either for a while until it was told to me, because it feels obvious after you do it for a while, and then on another token, no, it doesn't. Anyway, a decent smattering of stuff. It was mixed okay. I say okay because, my God, it clipped. Were you looking at the vector scope the whole time? Like, people talk about putting stuff in stereo or not more as a method of giving room for something. Like, and you have something in the mix, it's like, oh, I want to add this layer, but it conflicts. It's like, oh, I'll put it in stereo more. But you're in stereo still means you're conflicting with it. Like, the thing is in both channels. The other thing is just evenly in both channels. So if it conflicted before, how would it not conflict if it was in stereo? And the answer to that is that it's not actually about the signal conflict. That is our brain conflict, binaural conflict. Which is to say, and you sort of saw the result. You can see the result of the vector scope, where it's like if a thing is primarily here, and then another thing is primarily here, as well as we can see the shape in this little visual, is what our brains can detect as a palpable difference, and not just, oh, that's bigger or not bigger. It's in in a location. It's actually differently placed. And I thought it was really funny during this section when every one time the kick and snare hit, you could just see it like snow up on top. Let's listen. Because, like, did you see that center ball of stuff? That was the everything. That was the everything stuff. And it, how do you put more room in there, right? You just have a thing be so far outside of it that it's outside of it. Technically, that's not what's happening. Like, signal-wise, everything's on top of everything else. But all of the stuff is just trickery to make things happen in our head. Don't forget that. Anyway, moving on. The next track we have is Breeeee by Aeixo. So many ways to pronounce that. Moving on to plan. Yeah. Wee. Boop. That was a trip. This track was a trip. Not just because it used a whole bunch of sounds. It sounds like straight from it. This sounds kind of like a hyper version of Dreams of Bass. So I obviously really like the sound design since like I did a lot of it too, but having done a lot of it, I'm sure you've noticed a lot of its limitations in trying to automate it. It speaks, but it has a kind of a speed and a legibility issue, and it kind of is, some of that got shown a bit in this track. Although it's interesting because it's a product of how well you manage to balance the mix. Like I have it turned pretty low, and because of the previous track, but the everything is pretty well represented and evenly spaced, which actually means this is hella loud and pretty well weighted for something that is this powerful. I will say, though, that normally most of the tracks that end up this loud have an issue where they are somewhat top-heavy, and this one has somewhat the opposite problem, where it's a little bit bottom-heavy, at least until that starts to show up, and then the leveling starts to make sense. This vocal is way too loud. Normally, there wouldn't be much room to say that, but this track has the drums at level with everything. And that means that when you add this new thing that's on it, it's on the drums, and it doesn't particularly work, especially when they're that busy. It would work better if the vocals just were behind more stuff. So let's see how I don't know, probably not all that much, but it seems like you boosted them pretty good. But I would just blend them in a bit more with the stuff is all. Every time you would do something like that again, a vocal or not, like a lead or otherwise. I likened it to Dreams of Bass, not just because of the bass that's in it, but also because of the way the structure works, in that it seems very random, that like it's really just changing from thing to thing, which is basically what I did in Dreams of Bass, but that was because that was before I actually listened to a lot of the music that inspired me to make this and paid attention to its structure. However, you got far enough to have a mix this good. This feels very intentional and very like energetic, and like it travels, and I like that about it. It's not very conventional, but it's not bad because of it. It's actually a fun, unique thing, and I dig it. I would dig the drums being a bit more on than things are. But there's also a lot of them, and they do a lot, so it's pretty impressive for how much is happening in this track. Plus, this build-up was excellent. This that much, like that was a lot of hype being made out of that. So whatever it is you're doing, you can continue to do that. It'll be nice. Coming up next, we have someone whose name is either spoiler plausible or just plausible, and this track is called Unforseen, and I didn't check this ahead of time, and I have no idea this is what's happening, but if I had to guess, I would say potential Half-Life spoilers. I was going to say Half-Life 2, but it could be a lot of other things. Or this might have nothing to do with that. I don't actually know. Here comes this.
want a taste?
Just in case we fail.
I understand perfectly.
What a very hard, very pretty track. That ends the same way it begins, apparently. So, wow, this was really cool, actually. Like, I didn't know what to expect. There were no spoilers in there, unless, nope, I see no images. But that was just dope. That was just solid dopeness. This was probably the prettiest kind of this drum and bass I've heard meshed this well. Like, this doesn't totally sound like two separate tracks. It a little sounds like two separate tracks, but it sounds slightly more than what happens when a DJ plays two separate tracks. Like this stuff was excellent, and it did good, and like it didn't take away from this. This got a little long on the tooth though, especially because you only get a little bit of this before it ends, and you get a lot of this, and like even some of it in the intro into this. Like this, like is still part of that section. There needed to be some kind of X factor happening into either A/B this part or some other thing that varied it up. I don't know what, or maybe just not to have had this start in here and not even do this extra bit. It is not though as though I would have given a damn about that if I were just listening to this on a playlist doing stuff, or playing in a set doing stuff. Like the structural complaint only matters because of our tight gaze we're giving it at the moment. Because this track is good. Even like this stuff doesn't traditionally mesh particularly well. Like, but you did a good job. I'm pretty impressed by that. Like, that's work what you did there, and it felt good. Cool beans. Good job. Plausible and or spoiler plausible. Anyway, coming up next we have Nasty by Gloo. Gloo. Okay. Okay. Well, my first guess was going to be hardstyle, but nope, that was rhythm. Or death step? Was that death step? I might have finally heard some death step. All right, well, this choice was strange. Although I dig the mixing choice here, but it had almost no relationship to the main riff, and it did not help the palette. Like the main stuff sounded pretty good. I dug it, but like when it was on with the lead, didn't really work out. And not like a nasty kind of like good nasty way. It wasn't even really nasty. I mean, this was nasty, but this stuff wasn't really all that nasty. I'm not really sure what I would do with it or without it. You know what I mean? Like it depends on your vision for it. But I might have gone with almost nothing, you know what I mean? Like, not necessarily not nothing else here, but like, it didn't necessarily have to be melodic. It didn't even have to be most things, you know? Like, it had to just be something else that wasn't this for a second, so that we could go back to it. That is its only real purpose. But as far as execution goes, this worked out. It's loud as balls, and it's clipping all over the place, but it sounds like the thing, and it's nasty. So, good job there. Coming up next, we have Soulless from Octium. Like octopus, but Octium. All right. All right. Excuse me, please. Here comes. Okay. So this track had a similar structural fun to it that earlier track did that I was mentioning that reminded me of Dreams of Bass. This one doesn't remind me of Dreams of Bass, but it does remind me of how I wrote stuff back then when I wrote like drum and bass tracks, and a few of the ones that I managed to actually finish, I wrote them a little bit like this, which is basically like what you hear when you go to a show. And you go to listen to a show, you listen to a DJ play, this is what a DJ does. And I love tracks like this that basically are like this switch up way at the end here, turn into this. This is just like a different song now, and it brings it around, and it's cool and all, but that's just what DJs do. They switch it up and layer it and do cool, fun stuff. You know, they're cool, fun DJs. But the point is, when your only source for listening to these things is as such or in a mix or something like that, then of course when you go to make it, you're going to want to make it feel and sound the way that it is the best when you're at your peak experiencing it. And it looks a little bit like this, doesn't it? And I have no idea this is at all true for the person who made this, but that was true for me when I made stuff like this. I was 100% just doing like a DJ mix in one song. I'd be like, cool. So here comes the next section, and this means like I have to make something that's in a new key, in a different tempo. Like, what was I doing? This obviously isn't that extreme, but like that's the way it goes, and it comes up with some interesting results. But at the same time, though, it's interesting all these new little sound design bits that come in that, in and of themselves, I don't know if I would describe as being impressive or not, except for which one? This guy. I like this guy. He probably doesn't sound that hard, but he's pretty cool sounding. Like, that's pretty wavetable-y, like, serum sounding stuff, but this particular expression of it, that was fun. And a few times, like, there was just gnarly sound. It feels random-ish. This guy just, though, like, it was chosen purely for the difference. Like, the job of the moment is to switch it up, even though really it's not that different, and really we're still doing the same basic thing. The fact that we're changing the timbre up hard enough makes it something different enough that the attention is carried. And that's what I like about tracks like these, that it just throws new stuff at you. It is a very intense listening experience. It tends not to, I don't know, it's not, I was going to say it's not the most accessible, but this probably is. Wow, I guess things have progressed to that point, huh? Anyway, Soulless from Octium. Coming up next, we have... Okay, so this is a remix of a track called Kerro Kerro Bonito by Afro and Robobt. It's a remix. This... Afro is one of the staff members in the Discord. Fun guy. All right, here we go.
How many shrimps do you have to eat before you make your skin turn pink? Eat too much and you'll get sick. Shrimps are pretty rich. あいつらはピンク動物園で思ったピンク食べ物でそうなんだ実は私はたらこが大好きプラスエビカニ食べようピンク色になるのだからみんな違う色人間って勘違いしてるよね Black, white, green or blue Show off your natural hue Flamingo Oh, 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 oh If you're multicolor, that's cool too You don't need to change It's boring being the same Flamingo Oh, 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 oh You're pretty either way Shrimps are pretty rich. How many shrimps do you have to eat before you make your skin turn pink? Eat too much and you'll get sick. Shrimps are pretty rich.
Wow. This was intense. This was a kick-ass track. This is such a good mix. Goddamn, the kick and snare and sub relationship is perfect. The impact on this is insane, and the impact on everything is insane. This like reminds me of the first time I heard Bangarang, and everything in it hit, even things that weren't hits. That's sort of what this feels like, and it's really good. This is a really excellent mix. Also, lots of really fun sound design in here. Like, there was lots of extra fun individual moments in here. Plus, all the regular things even had nice tastiness to them that made them just a little bit extra, and it felt good. What were some of the good ones? Like some of these guys, I like this dude's a lot. Like this whole section was pretty killer. And like the hit impact separation on stuff is so good. What's interesting is that normally when something's that well separated on something like this, I'm used to being able to see like separate, like really they're not, like the thing would end enough. And that's usually why a thing could feel that way. But that's not the case here, which is evidence of such good jobs mixing. And I am, of course, turning this way down, listening to it pretty low, which is to say that this is astoundingly loud. I turn it down as well when it's recorded so that you guys aren't getting a full blast either. So you know. But yeah, good job, guys. Kick ass. Good jobs all around. You guys make a lot of really good music. It's awesome to hear it played out. You guys should everybody should keep doing it. Keep it up. More kick ass music, please. Thank you. Oh yeah, now I remember what I wanted to say at the beginning of the video. If you'd like to have one of your tracks featured in one of these videos, head on over to the Discord channel, linked in the description of this video, which will have a channel to submit your tracks, plus rules to help you submit your tracks, and moderators and staff members to be there around you to make sure that you're helping correctly to submit your track, and then your track might get randomly selected from the pool of tracks that are submitted. That is how it is picked to be what comes up here, which is why I don't necessarily know what's happening until I hear them here with you. It is a shared experience. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. And as usual, have a nice day.